Hey there, welcome back to the Working Actor on Casting Workbook. Hope you all had a great week. Today we are talking to a very popular actor here known in Canada. His name is Salvatore Antonio, and he starred in Schitt's Creek, Slasher, Transplant, The Republic of Sarah, and just recently he was cast as the villain Scar in Mirvish Productions' The Lion King. And he joins us today on the Working Actor to just give us some insight on his career and how you can adapt some of his knowledge and insight into your career and nail that gig. Because that's what we do here on The Working Actor. We like to help actors around the world be inspired by really successful working actors such as yourself. So, welcome, Salvatore, to The Working Actor.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very generous introduction.
It's not generous when it's all truth, right? It's all the truth. And it's so impressive because you've got over 30 years experience in this industry. Started off as an actor, writer, and now you are an acting coach and you're still successful at both of them, which is
Mhm.
which is such a feat in this industry because you love doing both of them and you're successful at both of them. So, first of all, congratulations with playing Scar in The Lion King. First, let us know
Thank you.
about that experience and how happy you are to take on that role.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah.
I'm about just under 2 weeks out from starting rehearsals.
Okay.
But I've already had like several fittings for the mask and the outfit and the everything, and finally got to see the production first time in my life. About a week and a half ago, I went to New York and got to see it on Broadway and meet everybody there and spend some time with the actor who's been playing Scar there for the past 7 years. His name is Stephen Carlisle. And we had the opportunity to chat after the show for about an hour. Very lovely man. And so I gained, invaluable insight into the whole thing. I'm very excited. I mean, like, the role, the show comes with such a legacy, and it means so much to so many people. And I know that the role is one that is quite iconic. So I have some big shoes to fill, some big paws to fill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that one a million times, I'm sure, in the next year. But
Never gonna get old. Don't worry, it'll never get old.
so yeah, I'm equal parts excited and nervous, which to me is always a good sign. I equate nerves with care. It means that I care. I want to do a good job. So that's how I'm setting out. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, obviously, you saw the animation of The Lion King, right? So you didn't.
Well, I I now have.
Okay.
So I came into the audition process quite late. Like we didn't submit to be seen because I'd never done musicals. It wasn't really, a thing that I thought I had any chance at. So I was asked to audition, I guess, in the third round of callbacks. So I came in a bit late, and had no idea who Scar was, had never seen The Lion King. It's kind of I know, gasp. I have to own this because if I start lying about it now, I mean, but the fact of the matter is like, it's a DVD that I used to put on for my nieces when I was in charge of babysitting, and I would kind of leave the room. So I knew about it in a peripheral sense, had never actually watched it myself until my second callback. So even when I did my first audition, I still hadn't seen the show, still hadn't seen the film. But just what I got from the script alone, it all felt very recognizable to me as a role and storylines that had kind of been drawn a bit from Shakespeare. And so it wasn't like I went in clueless, but I was like, I didn't really have any preconceived notions of how it should be done, which I think worked in my favor. So I just went into that audition as I would any audition and just was like, tried to make it my own and just brought in the energy of like trying to originate a role as opposed to do a version of one that has been done so many times before. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. That's amazing. And this is why you got the role. But I gotta say, like, Scar is like one of the main characters in The Lion King. He is the villain, right?
Well, I mean, I'm now up to speed. So,
Okay.
so I have now seen the film quite a
Mhm.
few times. I have read up a lot. I mean, I'm just working backwards is essentially
Right.
what's happened. So, once I was cast in the role, I did my due diligence and basically read everything I could on the show, on the creation of the original, just like background of the character, inspirations, all that kind of stuff. Everything short of looking at other people's performances.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm now up to speed and have a real appreciation not only for the show and what it is, but also what it means to so many people. And I think that's an important thing to kind of um, honor as I'm heading into it. Yeah,
Well, I can't wait to see you in this performance, but I
thank
also think
you.
it's really fascinating and such a valid point that you make, how you had no idea who or what the character was or what he meant to audiences. And you went in and played him how you thought he should be played and not how
Yeah.
people perceive him or how we're used to knowing Scar to be played. That's
Hmm.
that's a testament to your talent, obviously. So congratulations.
Listen, it worked out in my favor this time. We all know as actors, it's like all you can do is give it your best, and then everything else is up to so many variables beyond our control. So, I consider myself fortunate and lucky to have been what they were looking for. But I went in as I would go into any audition, looking at those things that you just mentioned, which is to basically personalize the role
Yeah.
and make it my own and kind of attune it to my own instincts and impulses, just so everything felt really grounded.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, you said this is your first musical. You've never done musicals before?
Well, actually, so I've now had to amend that answer because it's been so long since
Oh,
I've done a musical. I did a couple musicals in high school. So I went to an arts high school, Unionville High School. Um, and our school show, if you wanted to be in the school show was always a musical. So I was always auditioning for these shows under duress just because I wanted to do the school show. So I
right.
actually have done a couple musicals. We did Peter Pan, where I played Captain Hook at the age of 15.
Oh my goodness.
And
What's with the villain roles?
I know, right? There's a thing here. Um, Captain Hook, and then I did another show called Carousel, where I played the lead in that one. Way out of my league in terms of singing, but I guess I'm an actor who can sing,
Yeah.
but I would never call myself a singer first. No. So it's been almost 30 years since I've done a musical.
Okay. It's been 30 years since you've done a musical. You say you were talking about schools. You went on to attend the prestigious National Theatre School of Canada, which anyone who's tuning in here from outside of Canada, that's very equivalent to Juilliard, right?
Mhm.
And then afterwards, you went on to teach at the National Theatre School of Canada.
Yeah.
So you must have had so much insight and valuable knowledge to share with your students, which is why we're having you here on The Working Actor. How do you make the transition from theater to from the stage to the screen? Because not only are you successful in theater, you also have, Schitt's Creek, Transplant, all these other movies, Slasher, The Republic of Sarah, Mary Kills People. So you did both of them in your career, but it's not the same type of acting. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct. I think the job of an actor is to adjust, like consistently, constantly making adjustments, whether that is to a specific medium or to a direction. But our job is to remain um, open and malleable and available to new ways of doing what we do and to not lock down and dig our heels in and just believe that there is only one way to do anything. Um, so, in a nutshell, that's how, if I've made any crossover between theater and film, it's just that. It's just I just adjust to what the audience is. And the way I explain it to my students is basically saying, when you're working on camera, the front row is the distance of the person that you're talking to, the other person in the scene. I don't really worry about the camera because that's somebody else's job and they are specialized in that field. I don't worry about the technical elements of the scene, unless, of course, I'm asked to honor a spike or, keep out of the way of that light or, things like that. But otherwise, I try to just focus on who I'm talking to. And on camera, my audience, the first row is the person I'm speaking to. So that's how I gauge the level of my performance in terms of, I mean, my thing is if you know who you're talking to, then your instrument automatically adjusts to make that feel natural. So I wouldn't blow past somebody I'm speaking to in terms of volume or size of gesture because they're right there and they can hear me. Once you're doing stage, you have to all of a sudden that rule kind of switches and you have to play to the back audience, the back row of the audience, so that they are included in the storytelling. Therefore, if the person that you're speaking to is that far away, you just open things up and make everything a bit larger and, really take in like, there's no forced perspective so they can see everything. So that for me is the biggest difference is just going size of audience is what informs size of performance. And if you kind of think of it that way, it keeps it really simple and stupid, which I need it to, so that I can actually focus on the emotional content of what's going on. I don't like to worry about technical stuff. Um, and so that's basically, but I had to figure that out for myself, which I think
Right.
is an important thing to mention. When I went to NTS, we had very limited TV and film training. We were basically given a week um, with a very well-known instructor who would come in for a week at the end of our third year, of our final year, and kind of just do a 1 week intensive, if you will. But I didn't really get much from that, except that I was not built for camera. I kind of came out of that experience. Everything I was doing was kind of described as too big or over the top or too large or not a natural fit, quote unquote,
Right.
for the camera. And that was kind of devastating because,
Yeah.
everybody, especially at that age, everybody just wants to get it right and wants to be nailing whatever it is they're trying to do. Um, and it was very frustrating, but the one thing that I didn't really give myself credit for at that time was my tenacity and just the fuel of proving someone wrong
Right.
was something that kind of made me obsessed with figuring it out on my own because I thought, well, if this teacher, who is one of the best in the country, says that I'm not made for this medium, I can just accept that and
Mhm.
go, okay, well, that's done, or just go, well, that's just one person's opinion and I'll figure it out. And that's what I did. I set about trying to learn it myself. I couldn't really afford classes coming out of theater school. So I asked my agent at the time to get me in the room as a reader, an unpaid reader.
Oh,
I offered my services as a reader so that I could be in rooms that I couldn't get into as an actor, um, and just watch people do it over and over and over again. Everyone from novices to seasoned vets. I just watched hundreds of auditions as a reader and just, basically it was like learning on the job
yeah.
through observing and always asking myself after an audition, to myself, not out loud to anybody else, but going, why did that work or why didn't that work? And over time and repeated exposure to the actual process of auditioning, I kind of cobbled together an approach for myself that worked for me.
Mhm.
And once I started applying it and started booking, I then kind of became obsessed with sharing it, which is where the teaching was born from. I
Okay.
just thought, let's demystify this thing and let's stop. There's so much guru worship in acting training that is so dangerous. And I thought, let me just speak to them from the front lines and be like, I'm actually doing what you're wanting to learn about.
That's
I'm
great.
not somebody who had a career 30 years ago and now I'm retired and speaking to you in some
Right.
romanticized way. I actually have to audition for all my roles. I'm not an offer only actor. I routine when we had waiting rooms, I routinely see my clients in the same waiting room that I'm in. So there's something about that
Yeah.
equalized playing field that I think allows people to have their defenses down, which allows for better work, but also just not waste time in kind of idolizing the voice that instruction is coming from, and just instead putting that energy to application and to
Mm.
personalizing it for themselves. It's a really long answer to your succinct question. My apologies.
I had all of those questions for you, and you were answering them because they were all flowing and leading to the next one, which was great. But what you just said was so inspiring to all the actors who are going to be tuning in because it's so relatable, right? And I think the fact that you decided that you wanted to teach and make yourself on the same playing field as everyone, you
Mhm.
also have that relatability where you're like, I'm just like him, so I'm going to learn from him, right? And I think
Right.
that's fantastic, fantastic. Okay, let's talk about how you started working with Schitt's Creek because that's probably one of the best shows ever. I was addicted. I loved it. Proud Canadian. But tell me a little bit how you got involved with them because you went on as a writer, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So Daniel, who is the creator, the star, the showrunner of
Yeah.
Schitt's Creek, is one of my best friends.
Okay.
We were friends before Schitt's Creek. And so, knowing each other as we have for years, he also knew that I was a writer. I'm a published and produced playwright. That's how I got into writing. And so Daniel has been to see shows of mine that I've written and directed. And so kind of, in addition to being my friend, also knew of me in terms of what I do as an actor and what I do as a writer. And waited until season 4. So it wasn't like I was in for, like the show was already a proven hit and a success by season 4. Um, it was the summer before season 4 began that we were at a wedding, a friend's wedding in Newfoundland, and he very casually asked me if I would be interested in joining the writers' room. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Are you drunk? Like, what is this?" It's just not something that I had ever like thought he would do, especially that far into the show, because it's quite a risk to bring in new voices in to something that's already working. But to his credit, he did. So I accepted, and I went into the writers' room, and which was amazing, an amazing experience. That was my first writers' room ever. Was Schitt's Creek, and got to work with some seasoned, brilliant writers in that room, uh, Daniel included, and became story editor uh, for that season. Essentially, got bumped up to story editor, and so that was and wrote myself a little cameo.
You wrote yourself
Uh,
a cameo, exactly. After you have to write yourself a cameo.
well, you know what's funny? What's funny with that? And I think Daniel's spoken about this before. Is So I, in our friend group, always do impressions of Daniel because he's so
Okay.
easy to make jokes about. But like, so I would do an impression of Daniel that was quite spot on to Daniel, and he would always be like, "I don't see it, I don't get it." I'm like, we're like, he would be the only, which is kind of our rapport. And what's funny is I wrote or pitched this character. I didn't actually write the character. I just pitched it that there was somebody who was kind of competition in the neighboring town, who was kind of copying his style
Yeah.
and, that kind of thing. And then I had to leave the writer's room early because I was doing a story arc as an actor on Mary Kills People. And so I had to leave to go start filming that. So I actually left that writer's room before the end of the writing season. And while I was gone, they fleshed out this character and named him Antonio.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, and then Daniel kind of offered it to me, and I went, "Well, I'll absolutely jump at the role at the opportunity to make fun of you in the show. Like, come on."
At that
So
point,
that's how that worked out.
yeah, and you guys are such great friends. You're like, I'm not really acting. I do this all the time anyway,
Exactly. If anything, I had to hold back a bit. Yeah, I had to hold back a bit for TV.
You've played such great characters. Is there one character in particular from, if it's Antonio, if it's in Transplant, if it's in Mary Kills People, or that really challenged you and you kind of felt like you had to stop for a moment and see how you would
Hmm.
get through it?
It's a great question. Uh, you know, I've been so blessed, like, just, in preparing for this interview, just kind of looking over some stuff and being like, God, I really have been so blessed with the variety of characters that I've been allowed to play.
Yeah.
And allowed to play is the key word because I think as actors, we can do a lot more than what we're seen for.
Mm.
And don't, and we very easily limit ourselves to that which somebody else's imagination sees us as. And I just think, when you're seen or when someone takes a risk and just thinks just a little bit outside that box, you can unlock parts of yourself that were just waiting to be used. And I've had that. I've been privileged to have that in terms of the roles that I've been able to play. Um, for different reasons, one of the most challenging roles for me was in Mary Kills People. I had to play someone who found out that he was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, which is terminal brain cancer, and then spent that season essentially dealing with that, and then rejecting treatment and deciding to end his life on his own terms, which
Ooh,
was a central part of what the show was about. And that really took me, that was a challenge, just because, you know, if if one works the way I do and you want to personalize everything, and instead of playing a character, just finding yourself within that character, you have to go to some places that are really uncomfortable.
yeah.
And I kind of had to think about my own mortality, and and I, it was a wonderful mix of great writing, great directing, cinematography. Everything kind of came together in that one project, and I felt very supported. Um, and I had a director, David Wellington, who really challenged me to go past what I thought was my limit, and I felt very raw and very exposed. And it's the only time when I have gone in to do post-production, to do ADR, that I've actually cried watching my own performance. Because for any of us who have done ADR, there's nothing magic about it. It's actually quite, it's one of the worst parts of the process where you go in and see an uncorrected version of your performance where you have to sync up your voice to what you're doing on camera and you just sit there and self-cannibalize because you're like, oh my God, I look horrific. I sound awful. This,
Right.
but it was actually so like the alchemy of the whole filming process and everything. It's like I was watching somebody else. And I haven't really had that experience before that when it comes to TV. And I just found myself with my headphones on watching the thing, like crying at my own performance, but not because I was remembering what it was like from the inside, but because it actually moved me from the outside, because I was like, what am I doing? Like when did that happen? When did like it didn't really feel like a lot of preconceived notions and choreographed choices. It felt very alive. And so it was one of those experiences where like I just worked through the feeling of being challenged and ended up finding some stuff that I'm quite proud of.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I was ever nominated for an acting award was for that role as well. So I feel like it kind of resonated with more people than myself.
Yes. Now, did you get emotional too because you didn't recognize the person you were seeing because you were like, I did a really great job and you were proud of yourself as well for it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like, we have to, especially as Canadian actors, we have to allow ourselves the moment where we just go, I was good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're taught humility and being humble to the point where it actually starts eating away at us. And I
Mhm.
feel like you can be proud of your work and it not be confused with arrogance. That you can work on confidence without it. You know what I mean? Like we have to kind of there's so much in this business. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place.
No, you're
There's
not.
so much in this business that detracts from our self-worth, that anything we can do to build that self-worth up, that isn't delusional, we should try and identify and do. And that was one of those moments where I was like, it would take more energy for me to pretend that I don't like what I'm seeing than to just accept that I did a good job,
Mhm.
um, and feel good about that. Let that inspire more good work. And that's all it did is it just kind of raised the bar for myself. Is I just
Right.
went, well, okay, if you can do it there, how do you do it without all the tears, without all the pushing, without all the muscularity? How do you get there quicker so that we can spend more of the takes refining the work rather than arriving at a usable first take? Does that make sense?
That makes some complete sense. I'm totally moved by this interview because I find
Oh,
there's so much insight and just like really motivational talk and experience
right.
from you,
I'm
right?
glad because I just think as actors we need to share more. And it's
Absolutely.
really easy to just share when things are good,
Mhm.
when you book something, when you're on a successful upswing. But the reality is that successful upswing comes on the back of a downswing. That's
Yes.
been my career, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And I feel like we need to share all of that with each other so that we feel less alone and less alienated in an industry, in a job that already makes us feel alienated. We need more community. And so I'm glad that that this resonates with you because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Making it all sound easy and like it was always there, I think is so dangerous because it makes
Yeah.
people compare themselves, and that's just not the truth.
Absolutely. And I know we have a lot of actors that tune in. I don't, yes, I'm like, I'll get cast for certain roles, but it's always what I do for a living, which is I'm a TV and radio host. So I always get cast for the entertainment reporter or the reporter,
Sure.
etc. But what you just said resonates to anyone listening. They can adapt it and apply it to anything that they're going through in life, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, what brings me to the core approach, because after the National Theatre School of Canada, you kept on acting, but now you also have the core approach, which is a training studio for actors that you can give them this guidance and help them with
Yeah.
their techniques. So tell me a little bit about that. It's still around, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. It actually, I just opened it last year, a year ago. So while I was working at the National Theatre School as a guest artist, where I was teaching the course that I had, for all intents and purposes, failed, which was acting for camera, I went
What?
back. I know, right? I went back after almost a decade and started teaching that class. And a huge part of it was always starting off saying, "Hey, if I can be here in the teaching position, then any one of you in this room can make this work."
Hold on. So
Yeah,
you were told you were not right for camera, and now you're teaching the class on how to be right for camera?
correct. Yeah, I wouldn't have chosen those words, but yeah, yes, that
Okay.
that's essentially what happened. That's the poetic justice of it all, is that yeah, I ended up teaching the class that I hadn't you didn't really fail courses, but I did not do well in that class when I took it. And so I went in when I was asked to teach it because I had amassed enough credits and whatever that it was viable. I went in and the cornerstone of how I was going to teach was relatability and the reality of the industry as it is now, not what it was 20 years ago, which I don't think is helpful to anybody. And a lot of the books and a lot of the instruction that we get from people are is so dated. And we know just in the past 5 years how much the industry has changed. Do you know?
Wow.
So like there's stuff to be gained from anything, like any type of instruction or reading a book, but we have to pass it through the filter of, yeah, but what do I do today with this information? So I started teaching at NTS, and then while I was still teaching at NTS as a guest instructor, I started working at another studio in Toronto. And I started running that studio for 15 years, and I left that place last year and started my own so that it could basically run with this approach. And I call it an approach as opposed to a method, because I feel like there's so many methods, and what it does is it allow it. So the danger with methods is that they allow people to think that acting is akin to a just add water and mix type thing. Whereas, like, if I just do this, then my acting will be good. And I think that's dangerous because if it were that easy, anybody could do it. And I think if your approach to acting is centered in you being the core element, there's the name of my studio,
Mm.
then what we are creating is the next Natasha because we don't have one yet. We're still waiting for you. We have a Meryl, we have a Denzel. We don't need a reasonable facsimile of those people. What we need is the first Natasha to show up. But if Natasha does not champion herself and use her story and her impulses and instincts to inform that character, you'll never declare yourself in the work. So that's the foundation of my studio, is to basically start. I only train, we don't have beginner classes, even though those are a huge moneymaker for so many studios. I was interested in working with professionals or people who have already trained to kind of get in there and massage some of that stuff that's calcifying in them already and kind of bring them back to themselves and go, okay, so you have all these skills, you have all these outside voices. I'm going to add one more voice from the outside simply to say, give yourself some credit. You have lived as long as you've lived till today by doing what? Adjusting, acclimating, using your instincts and impulses. They're all in there. Otherwise, you'd be dead by now. You would have crossed a road when you shouldn't have and been hit by a car and be dead. So I know, maybe I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but the biggest thing for me is going, if you empower the actual individual, then they will activate the actor inside them with more courage and boldness. And I think that's what we need.
That's so empowering, so powerful. Sign me up. I love it. I love it. I know that you've obviously, you have so much praise and accolades, and people rave about your performances. And you were recently also awarded by ACTRA for outstanding performance.
Yes.
So when you receive these accolades, or you hear people praise your work, or you also get acknowledged for your work, how does that make you feel? I'm sure it feels good, but how does it make you really feel?
Um, I'm looking away because I'm getting a bit emotional.
Oh,
It's um it's very moving
yeah, yeah.
because
Oh,
any of those accolades have come so late in my career. The majority of my career has been just doing the work and doing the work for work's sake and not looking for nominations because they didn't come for almost 30 years.
mm,
So I'm like, okay, cool. That's not going to happen. You're not doing it for that anyways. Get on with the work. So when they did start coming, uh, I was very moved because all it means to me is that my colleagues, my peers, are noticing my work and think it's good. And that, because it's not, I'm not winning the People's Choice Awards or anything like that, where like
not
there's
yet.
a where the not yet, not yet. Where there's a public that's voting. These nominations have come from my peers, whether it's my union or like or the academy. And I look at who that acknowledgement comes from, and that's what moves me, is because I'm going, it's coming from people who know. The people who nominate you know how hard it is. Um, And so when they choose to, give you that, it's just such a gift. And the most overused cliche that I learned is actually true is the nomination is enough.
Mhm.
It's just an honor to be nominated. That is so true.
Mm,
Because they can't take that away from you, number one.
mm,
Uh, and it's just fuel in the tank. Like you don't realize you're running on empty till something like that comes, which is essentially a pat on the back, and you just go, okay, I'll keep going. Like, you know what I mean? I'll keep doing this. But we all want to be seen as actors, as humans,
mm.
and it's a version of being seen. And it makes me feel very good.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
you deserve every bit of praise
Thank
that
you.
comes your way and more.
Thank you.
I,
Thank
I
you.
guess the it's the life lesson of, like, if you're never too old to start again or keep going after your dream. And also, you were mentioning a gift. I really feel that this hour with you has been a gift for the working actor and all the actors tuning
Thank
in.
you.
I'm so grateful to have had this
Thank you.
opportunity with you. You're amazing.
I
I
appreciate you.
cannot
Thank
wait
you.
to see you play Scar in Toronto. Uh,
Yeah,
that is
me
going
too.
that's going to be hitting the stage this fall, correct?
Yeah, so we start rehearsals September 9th,
Mhm.
and the show starts previews November 2nd.
All right, I will be there in the front row, so hopefully you'll see me.
Cool. Well,
And
you let me know when you're coming and I'll see you
I would
backstage.
love that. Congratulations on all your success, and I can't wait to
Thank
see
you,
you again.
Natasha.
Thank you
I
so much.
really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and your energy.
Oh, my pleasure. This was
Cool.
amazing.